Hi, thank you for listening again. Today, I wish to speak about Jesus Christ crucifixion and resurrection and the period during the Passover week. And so I have a lot of information. I want to get to it. I want to establish his birth, time of his ministry, uh, that sort of thing. And so I'm going to get right into it. There's a lot of evidence here that I want to present to you. So I'll start right in. So, my opening statement: Christians around the world continue to believe in a Good Friday crucifixion and a Sunday resurrection, but this is not biblical teaching. It's not found in your Bible. And so, to start with, what I want to open up with is Matthew 12, verse 38, 39, and 40. Now, Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees, and they're asking him for a sign that he is Son of God. They want proof from him. And his response is, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. There shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And so that's his prophecy. Jesus said he would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now, I would say this is based on Jonah 17:1. Here in Jonah it says, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And so that's apparently is where Jesus is taking his prophecy from. Now there's three verses that do also support this. Matthew 27:63, Jesus speaking, saying he will rise again after 3 days. Jesus speaking again in John 2:19 and 20. That he would raise up this temple in 3 days, referring to his own body. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 15:4 said that Jesus rose again the third day. Now, the false teaching that I want to refute here is showing that there'd be Friday night and Saturday night would be 2 nights in the grave, and Saturday day would be 1 day in the grave. And so 2 nights in 1 day does not add up to 3 nights and 3 days, as Jesus prophesied for himself. And so it's important that we go through this. And in terms of counting from Jesus was born, I'm going to show that born in 4 BC. It's important to understand that when we count back to the AD period, that there's no years that begin with 0, and there's only 1 year we'll use that begins with 1. And so we'll count 4, 3, 2, 1 down, and then back up 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So just want to point that out. Okay, so getting into my evidence, birth of Jesus. And so what I'm going to establish here that he was born in the year 4 BC. So if you look at Luke 1 through 8, it does say that in the first verse, that it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And also this second verse is, this taxing was made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And also I want to drop down to verse 7 and 8. It basically says that Jesus was her firstborn, Mary's firstborn, wrapped in swaddling clothes, laid in a manger. There was no room for them in the inn. And verse 8, which goes with this here, there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. So this certainly counts out this December 25th Christmas Day business about Jesus being born then. And it appears that Jesus was born in this fall, or the autumn of 4 BC. So I'm going to establish the 4 BC, but right now I want you to see that it appears that he was born in the autumn, before the rains came. In that part of the world, that time, the sheep or the flocks would have been brought inside. It wouldn't have been left out over the cold, snowy winter season. Now, there's a chronicle of John Malalas, M-A-L-A-L-A-S. It's a series of events that he refers to regarding the 4 BC, translated by Matthew Spinka, S-P-I-N-K-A. And here's what it says. In 1940, it states, in the 39th year, in the 10th month of his reign, referring to Caesar Augustus, he commanded the taking of a census of all lands. It would have been in the year 5 BC, in the month of July, when he issued his decree. the actual census was taken next year in 4 BC, as many historians have verified, including a fellow named Sodus. Sodus is S-U-I-D-A-S. He lived in the 10th century, early 11th century. He published Greek classical writings, including poetry. I couldn't find much on him, so we'll move on here. Historians, including Josephus, we've all heard about him as a historian, lived back in those times of the Lord. Historians, including Josephus, consider the last year of Herod's reign to be from April 4 BC to April 3 BC. And let's see, Josephus records an eclipse of the moon before the death of Herod, and this is found in Antiquities of the Jews. And a footnote in the works, Josephus points out the importance of the eclipse, and this is what he says. This eclipse of the moon, which is the only eclipse mentioned in Josephus, is of the greatest consequence for the determination of the time for the death of Herod and for the birth and entire chronology of Jesus Christ. It happened March 13th in the year of Julian period 4710, and the 4th year before the Christian era. Real quick, this Julian period in the Encyclopedia Britannica, it says that it's a chronological system now used chiefly by astronomers and based on the consecutive numbering of days from January 1st, 4713 BC, and not to be confused with the Julian calendar. So that's just a bit of what it is and what it is not. So as far as, let's see, let me just read something else here to you. Now, I think this is maybe the same quote from Ferguson's Astronomy. James Ferguson lived in 1710 to 1776, and he said that there was, according to, I think this is also according to Josephus, there was an eclipse of the moon in the time of Herod's last illness, which eclipse appears by astronomical tables to have been in the year of the Julian period 4710, March 13, at 3 hours past midnight. And now, as our Savior must have been born some months before Herod's death, since in the interval he was carried into Egypt, the latest time which we can fix the true era of his birth. So, James Ferguson was an astronomer. He studied and translated Sir Isaac Newton's concepts. He studied them and translated them into layman's terms, and his principal publications included astronomical tables in 1763. So I say this because I believe the man has credibility in what he is saying based on those tables, if nothing else. And going further here, let's see, what I did want to say was regarding that Cyrenius. He was probably, this is a quote, this is from Smith's Bible Dictionary, referring to Cyrenius, says that he probably was twice governor of Syria. His first governorship extended from BC 4, which he said which also includes the year of Christ's birth, thought that was interesting, to BC 1. It was during this time that he was sent to make the enrollment which caused Joseph and Mary to visit Bethlehem. And the second enrollment is mentioned in Acts 5:37, referring to taxing of the people. And so, again, being that he was Cyrenius, governor of Syria, I thought that was very good to point out. Now, Josephus also, let's see, so he records that the death was around the time of Passover. And since he died several months after the eclipse, March of 4 BC, as we know, yet during the time of Passover, he undoubtedly would have died in the Passover of 3 BC. As Dr. Hoy wrote, I'll refer to him in a moment here, this is the only, quote, the only date that agrees with all the known facts of history. And so here again, we show that Christ was born between the decree of 5 BC and the death of Herod in 3 BC. So the overlap there again is 4 BC. So we keep coming back to 4 BC. Now, Dr. Herman Hoy, which I'm going to refer to in 2 or 3 more times here, he, prior to his death in 2004, he was associated with the Worldwide Church of God, and which was founded by Herbert Armstrong in Oregon in 1934. Mr. Armstrong had died in 1986. And so just to give you an idea where these people are coming from. Uh, so moving on with Jesus Christ's birth, his ministry, and crucifixion. I want to point out in Luke 3:21, 22, and 23, specifically verse 23, he had been baptized in verse 21, and in verse 23, Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, and this is taken as gospel. I mean, he was 30 years of age at the time of his ministry and his baptism. And also keep in mind, John the Baptist was 6 months older than Jesus, and so this has some meaning here as I move on here. Actually, and if you count from 4 BC, 30 years, that'd bring you to 27 AD, and that was the time. I'm going to show that this was the time that Jesus started his ministry, 27 AD, when he was 30 years of age. Now, so this is reading from Luke 3. Verse 1 and 2 refers to the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, and Herod being tetrarch of Galilee. And verse 2 drops down to referring to the word of God came upon John the son of Zacharias in the wilderness. So this would have been his ministry. So this would have been about 6 months later. Also, Jesus had said that, referring to another quote that I'm going to give you, destroy this temple, and I will 3 days I will raise it up. And the Jews had said 46 years was this temple being took to build it, and they questioned him that he was going to raise up the temple, because they thought that he was referring to the temple, but he was referring to his body. Now, these verses I want to read, or rather this quote from Dr. Hoy, but this came from the book called Crucifixion Was Not on Friday. He wrote this, and so here's the quote: as Pilate did not begin his governorship till about the commencements of AD 27, and as Tiberius' 15th year ended about April of that year, John the Baptist must have begun his ministry in the first few months of AD 27, and 6 months later, Jesus would have been approximately 6 months later. Jesus would have followed. So 6 months was that was prior to Jesus' birth. So Jesus is basically 6 months behind John the Baptist here. So here's what it goes on to say: Jesus therefore could not have begun his ministry earlier than the autumn of AD 27. Neither could his ministry have begun after the Passover in the spring of AD 28, because the temple was already 46 years in building. So it was 46 years it was done. Therefore, Jesus must have begun to preach in the autumn of AD 27. There is no other date that would be consistent with all the provable facts. So that's from Dr. Hoy. And so if you look at, actually, if Jesus was born, if his ministry, I'm going to show that, for starters right here, that his ministry was 3.5 years to the point of at the point of he was killed. So if you had 3 months prior to the end of 27 AD, that'd be the autumn period. And then you have the full year of 28, 29, and 30. And then you have approximately 3, in this case it would have been 4 months, because Jesus died in April 25th. So 3 months or 4 months in the spring of AD 31. That gives you 3 years and approximately 6 months. So that would have been 3.5 years of Jesus' ministry. Now, interesting, Gerald Falwell, he goes way back. I don't know when he died, but here's a quote. He had said that, I personally believe he was referring to Jesus was crucified on Wednesday evening and rose after 6 p.m. Saturday evening. Now, it's interesting that he was a Sunday keeper. He did not recognize the Sabbath, but he understood the fact that Jesus had died on a Wednesday. He says, I personally, believe he was crucified on Wednesday evening. So he understood that, and he rose at 6 p.m. Saturday evening, just before sunset. And so just wanted to show that, and this is from WorldNet Daily in 2008, and on March 16th. So he understood basically what was going on with Jesus. And let's see. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, there are 3 separate Passovers. See, I'm trying to I'm trying to defeat that belief that Jesus, was crucified on Friday, Good Friday, and that he was resurrected on Easter Sunday. I'm showing that that can't be true. There are 3 separate Passovers mentioned during the time of Jesus, and the 4th time he died, and so. And let's see, one of those I know is, it looks like John 2:13, 6:4. There's another one, I didn't find that. And then, of course, the one where he died, April of AD 31. Now, regarding the crucifixion, if you look at Luke 23:45, it says that, and it was about the 6th hour, which is noon our time, and there was darkness all over the earth until 9th hour. That's 3 p.m. our time. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. So rent here refers to sever, split, to break, divide, and in the midst, in the middle. And the veil was something spread out. This is quoted in my concordance, Strong's concordance. And it goes on down here in Matthew 27:50 through 54. It does again talk about the temple being rent in twain, and twain would refer to 2 halves, or a half, or in the middle. And 54 says, when the centurion and they that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake, those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Son of God. And actually up above, they also referred to an earthquake. And so if on the back here, let's see, I made some notes back here. There was an open letter. This is an open letter testimony from a pastor that had died a number of years ago. This is up from the Church of God Eternal, and they're up in Oregon. And I was looking at this, and it's basically looks like an open letter and a testimony. And I just want to he had spoken to Mr. Armstrong back at this, this is a number of years ago, prior to 1986, and which I believe I think I said that's when he died. But anyway, Mr. Armstrong felt that he insisted that AD 31 was the year that Jesus, did die. And this guy, Raymond C. Cole, he was struggling with that. He wasn't sure about it. And then what happened here was, he says, to my surprise, several months later, Mr. Herman L. Hoy, who I just referred to a few minutes ago, came to me with a German book which listed all the astronomical dates for that period of time. Sure enough, the only year in the span of time mentioned above, which contained both an eclipse and a great earthquake at that time, was AD 31. And so I just thought that would be very good to show you that. Now, let's see. I think I may have spoken this. This is regarding the Passovers. The closest there was, of all 4 Passovers during Christ's ministry, not one of them fell on a Friday, according to God's sacred Hebrew calendar, the Jewish calendar. Now, remember, Jesus was killed on Passover. He was killed on Passover, and not one of these days fell on Passover did not fall on a Friday, not one Friday. And there wasn't a Friday Passover until at least 2 years later. So that really, the case against that Friday crucifixion and Sunday resurrection, it's a good case to be made. It's an easy case. It's just showing all the evidence. Now, a couple things. There were 2 Sabbaths that year and that week. There were 2 Sabbaths. Normally there'll be the weekly Sabbath, and I think this is why people have been so confused about the day that Jesus died. But there were 2 Sabbaths. Now the Bibles don't. There's only 2 Bibles. I think one is Fenton, and one which I have right here. I think this reads backward. This is Young's literal translation of the Bible. I happen to have that, and I had looked in there, and sure enough, the corrections were made in there. So there's 2 Sabbaths shown. And if you go to Strong's Concordance 45:21 in the Greek, it will refer you. It will speak of plural Sabbaths, and also now Young's literal translation of the Bible, Robert Young. It's 1862. It's his first edition, and if you look at Matthew 28:1, Mark 16:2, John 21 and 19. They both should read the first of the Sabbaths, but in the Young's translation, they do. In my King James, they don't. Most Bibles, they don't. But there's another one called Fenton Bible, and it's supposed to be in there as well. So that's proof. It's proof that there was two Sabbaths. That we had not only the Saturday weekly Sabbath, but we had the Thursday, the day after the Passover, the day after annual Sabbath, the holy day. That's the first day of unleavened bread, and that is always a Sabbath, and that fell on Thursday of that week. And so further evidence of the events that actually took place. Now, this is Daniel 9:24. I've got to do this really quick because, well, maybe I'll be okay here. But anyway, so Daniel, this is prophecy found in Daniel 24:27 regarding the beginning of Christ's ministry and his duration and the year of his death. And so verse 25 says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." Okay, now 7 weeks and 60 would be 60, and 7 would be 67, and 2 weeks would be 69. Of those 70, there's 70 weeks that those 4 verses refer to. Actually, verse 24 refers to the 70 weeks. So there's 69 weeks. Now, Messiah is mentioned twice in the Old Testament, and it's mentioned in these 2 verses that I'm dealing with here. And that's the only place in the Old Testament the word Messiah is used. Now, if you multiply, and another thing, Ezekiel 4 tells us to take 1 year and convert it to a 1 day for a year or 1 year for a day, depending how you're using that, that standard there. So if you take the 7 weeks, 7 times 69 is 483 days. Now, 1 day equals 1 year. That'd give you 483 years. So from the time of the decree of King Artaxerxes, I have trouble with his last name, Artaxerxes, to rebuild the temple until the Messiah would come was 483 years. Now, in the book of Ereza, I'm not doing well with words this morning with these names. Ereza, chapter 7, 8 through 13 records related events to this prophecy I'm speaking of. Now, according to Dr. Herman Hoy, 457 BC is absolutely fixed by the most accurate records of history written at that very time. This is from his booklet, The Crucifixion is Not on Friday, page 25. And so what it's showing, so if you count forward from 457 BC, 483 years, that brings you up to AD 27, the beginning of Christ's ministry, and the time, also the date of his baptism. Now, so regarding the prophecy of 70 weeks, verse 24, there's the 1 week remaining in verse 27. That 1 week would be 7 years prophetically. And in the midst of the week, this is what it says, and I'm taking this out. Let me just read it to you. "And he shall confirm," verse 27, this is again Daniel 9, verse 27, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause for the overspreading of abomination, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." Well, in the middle of the week, the midst of the week, would be a 3.5-year week. A 7-year, the week would be 7 years here. Okay, that's what this prophecy is showing, 7 years, and that's what Ezekiel, 4:6 shows. So the midst of the week would be 3.5 years. So there's that this specifies, so we understand that Christ caused the sacrifices to cease when he died. See, they went away at that point of his death, and he became the sacrifice. And Hebrews also shows that after 3.5 years. And and just one comment that I want to add here is it's interesting that Wednesday is in the middle of a week. Now, the verses don't specifically say that Jesus died on Wednesday or the half of the week, but it's interesting that 3.5 years would fall in the middle of that prophetic week, or that 7-year period, prophetic 7 years. It falls in the middle, and also Wednesday falls in the middle of the Passover week. Wednesday is the day that Jesus died. So I just wanted to comment. Okay, last thing I have here, I'm going to review really quickly. I did a couple charts. I thought I could present this, but I have 5 minutes here, and so should be able to do this. I'm going to basically read what I was going to present to you. This is the events of Passover week, and remember, we have 12-hour days, we have 12-hour nights. I'm going to just get into this. So we begin Tuesday day, okay, April 24th. And sometime between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Remember, sunset is always the beginning in God's calendar. Sunset is the beginning of the day, or the new day, and it goes around. The first 12 hours would go up around the clock and come back down to 6 a.m. 6 a.m. is just my example here. So if you start at 6 p.m. sunset, come around at 6 a.m. that'd be the night, and then 6 a.m. coming back around up to sunset would be the daytime. And so. So what I'm reading here is that Jesus was with the disciples on Tuesday, the day before Passover, day before his crucifixion, and between the 6 a.m. and p.m., Mark 26:17 tells us Jesus had requested his disciples to go and make preparations for the Passover meal, which they will eat shortly after sunset, because sunset is now Passover day. It's Wednesday, and Luke 22:15, and they Passover, which is Wednesday, April 25th, begins at sunset, 6 p.m. Again, my example, 6 p.m., which also is Tuesday evening. Okay, it's Wednesday day, but it is Tuesday evening. So after eating their meal, they leave for the Garden of Gethsemane outside of Jerusalem. While Jesus prays during the night, the disciples sleep. Late that evening, probably close to daylight, a mob led by Judas comes from out of Jerusalem out to arrest Jesus. And you can review those details in Mark chapter 14 and 15. And at about the time of sunrise, 6 a.m., they return back to Jerusalem. Jesus is then questioned by the high priest before the Jewish council, followed by Pontius Pilate and then Herod, of whom neither find fault with Jesus. And you can find those points in Mark 15, 1 through 5, Luke 22, 54, and 23, 4 and 14. Now, moving on here, Jesus is then taken to a location known as Golgotha and crucified at the 3rd hour, which is 9 a.m. our time. He gives up the ghost and dies at the 9th hour, which is 3 p.m. our time. And you can find that in Mark chapter 15, verse 34 and 37. Now, prior to sunset, Jesus is buried in the tomb. He's taken off the cross. Jewish custom, I believe, is that the bodies cannot be left on the cross, or they need to be buried by sunset. And so he was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. He was a wealthy man who was a follower of Jesus. And this is Luke 23, 52 and 53. Now, at this time of sunset, Thursday officially begins, but it is still Wednesday evening. And now we can begin counting the nights and days that Jesus is in the tomb. So Wednesday night counts as the first night. Let's not forget, Thursday is an annual Sabbath, first day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, Mark 14:1 and John 19:31. So we roll over to the following morning, which again from my example is 6 a.m., sunrise, and begin the first day Jesus is in the tomb. The 12-hour day takes us back to 6 p.m. sunset. At this time, Friday begins, as Thursday evening continues on. We follow the clock around to 6 a.m. We have now completed the second night. Jesus is in the tomb. We now begin the second day. Jesus is in the tomb. After a 12-hour period of Friday day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we arrive again at sunset. And of course, every sunset is the start of a new day, this one being Saturday. So Friday evening continues on for a third night. Upon completing the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. 12-hour period, we can begin the next day, and final 12-hour period beginning at 6 a.m. sunrise Saturday. At 6 p.m. Saturday sunset, at that point, if it's completed, it would have been, or just prior to sunset, because then you roll into Sunday, and Jesus wasn't in the grave Sunday, and he wasn't in the grave for four days. He was in the grave 3 days. So prior to sunrise, or prior to sunset Saturday, Jesus would have completed 3 nights and 3 days in the tomb. That's 72 hours, exactly as Jesus prophesied in Matthew 12:38-40. So Sunday, the first day of the week, the women, I'm referring to Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and a lady named Salome. Concordance, just a simple side issue here. My Strong's Concordance says that Salome is a female follower of Jesus. That's all it says. According to Strong's Concordance, all meet at the tomb. They bring sweet spices to anoint Jesus' body. Mark 16:1-2. But an angel tells them Jesus has risen and he is not here. That's verse 6. God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, had already resurrected our Savior. Now, that concludes my presentation, and it just hit 31 minutes, so I just made it. I'm really thank the Lord for that. I didn't know if I was going to squeeze it all in. But I've tried to establish one, that Jesus was born in 4 BC. His ministry began 30 years later in 27 AD, and it continued. The ministry was then for 3.5 years, and his resurrection, or rather his crucifixion, was on Wednesday of that's Passover week, Wednesday, April 25th of AD 31, and the resurrection would have been Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon, prior to sunset. And so I hope this helps. I'm trying to correct that. That's a false teaching that people are believing, and we have to move away from that. And this, otherwise, Jesus would be a false prophet, right? I mean, that's what the pastors are basically saying. Well, we're going to go our way with a false gospel, which makes Jesus a false prophet, but we know that's not fact. What Jesus prophesied came to pass. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, bye.